May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. I think that's probably one of the longest gospel readings we have apart from the Passion story. It's very important that it is. That all has to happen in one scene. Right? Everything that's going on in that gospel is incredibly important. And there's so much that can be said about each sentence almost. But we have to have it together and in its context. One of the nice things about the gospel reading this morning is that we actually know where this happened. Not only that, we still have the well at which this took place. That's quite rare for anything that happens biblically or in Scripture, to actually have the thing still there in the same place where it was in the time of Jesus. So I put a little bit of a picture up for you. You can't see it. Can you kind of see what's going on there? I know it's a little bit blurry. On the right-hand side of the picture is the actual well itself. That's Jacob's well. And then we have the little stoop in front of it. So that well is ancient. It's thousands of years old. And churches and places of worship had been built up around it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the church which is over it now is a Greek Orthodox church. It's only a few generations old, but many places have been built over that well. And we know that that's the place it was because it's in close proximity to a current archaeological site, which is very close to a biblical city, and because of the nature of worship which has happened in all these years. So this is an incredible story for a few different reasons. One of those is kind of the obvious. Jesus is speaking to a woman on his own. And she's on her own. That's absolutely scandalous in first century Palestine. It didn't happen. If it did, you're in a lot of trouble. There's a bigger overarching thing here too. That city that they were speaking just outside of, that town of the Samaritans, was the quickest route to get to Jerusalem. But most, in fact, nearly all Jews in that day would go around that town, sort of avoid it, to take a longer route to get to Jerusalem. Why was that? That sounds ridiculous. Because it is. Because the Samaritans were seen as unclean. We've heard this before. They were seen as people who worshipped incorrectly. They worshipped in the wrong place. We hear that going on between Jesus and the woman at the well now. And they had some kind of tenuous link in their blood to sort of pagan origins. So for all of these reasons, the Samaritans were kind of reviled and avoided as much as you could. But here's Jesus, exhausted from his journey, flouts all tradition as we see constantly, and just walks straight through towards that town to get a drink of water. This is Jesus going rogue, right? This is him going off script. His handlers aren't with him. They're kind of away in a different town, and they come back and they're a little bit shocked. But as we find throughout Scripture, Jesus goes rogue quite often. It's a common thing for him. So he's breaking a few laws here. First, he shouldn't be speaking. He shouldn't be going near that town. Second, he shouldn't be speaking to a woman on his own, especially as a rabbi. Third, this is not just any woman. She's out in the heat of the day at that day, which is incredibly important. The only reason a woman would be drawing water from that well in the heat of the day was because she was rejected by the rest of the women in that society. The times to draw water from a well was early in the morning when it was cool, or later at night, and you would do it together with a group of people. It was quite a communal thing. But no, this woman's out there by herself. And Jesus sparks up a conversation. And the conversation is amazing. The encounter between Jesus and the woman at the well, Bible, is the first time that Jesus reveals his full nature. Think about that. First time Jesus reveals his full nature as the Messiah isn't to a priest. It's not to a holy person. It's not to an emperor. In fact, it's not even to someone like you and me, who would be seen hopefully as, all right people. It's to a complete outcast. A complete outsider. And he did it by breaking just about every rule in the book. We see Jesus with his kind of rabbinic bantering going on here. Go and tell your husband. But I have no husband. No, you don't. In fact, you've had 5, and the one you're with now is not your husband. We have to be very careful here. Things have been written and sermons have been said about the woman's kind of sinfulness because of this, right? Or her potential licentiousness. But what we just learned a few weeks ago about the divorce laws at that time? It was only the man who was allowed to divorce the woman with a certificate of divorce. Remember that? Remember when Jesus spoke about, you've heard that it was said, if you want to divorce your wife, you can give her a certificate of divorce and dismiss her. Now I say to you, anybody who divorces their wife, apart from the grounds of unchastity, has committed sin. Remember that? And how we spoke about actually that's giving some power back to the women in that situation. Because now they can't just be left destitute. There has to be a reason for this. So if she really has been through 5 husbands, it's not her who was divorcing them. Unless they all had extremely short lives, which I guess is possible at that time. And then this woman goes back and tells everybody in the village everything she'd heard about Jesus and how he knew everything about her. And they start to come to the Lord through her testimony. What an amazing story. I think today it loses a bit of clout. Because we do have a lot of equality. We're not all the way there yet. We have a lot of equality in our society. We don't have the male-female laws. We certainly don't have the Samaritan Puritan laws that we had back then. But what we do have is this incredible story which reminds us of our place as Christian people. A couple of questions I have from this before I finish up with a little bit of reflection to us. Are we willing to go off script as Christian people? If Jesus is willing to go off script so much that he makes himself completely unclean and scandalous to his disciples, how much are we willing to go off script to help those who are most in need? How much are we as Christian people to go off script to maybe look a bit impure or look a bit less than, to help those in our society who are pushed down, who are marginalised, and who have historically been victimised? When people mention these things sometimes things are thrown at them like social justice warrior or a do-gooder or something like that. Well, if you're going to say that to people, then you have to say it to Jesus. Because that's what he did time and time again. He went to those who had no voice. He sought out those who were seen as dirty. In fact, he did it so much that he himself was seen as that. Remember the words from Paul in Romans today. It is unlikely that people will die for a righteous person, but for a good person they may just give their life. That's an important distinction. Being righteous does not necessarily mean that you are good. Remember, those who are righteous and who are right were the ones who crucified Jesus. Those who are righteous and who are right were the ones who made this woman go to the well at the heat of the day. Those who are righteous are the ones who put all these purity laws together that Jesus came to break and fulfill, and that Paul teaches us to do the same. But when those two things come together, righteousness and goodness, we glimpse the peace of the kingdom of heaven. When we're willing to be seen as a little bit dirty ourselves, or a little bit less than ourselves, in order to raise others up, we're doing the work of God. Make no mistake. So what does this mean to us today? Well, hopefully it's quite clear what I just said. Part of that, where we're meant to go, we're meant to seek out people. Heaven forbid we try and look clean and wonderful and only have the right demographic in our churches and grow to we're bursting our seams because we look wonderful and have a great product to sell. Let us never do that. But also with this COVID-19 thing which is going on at the moment, have any of you noticed the panic, or is it just me? All right, a little bit of panic going on the shelves. You all got toilet paper? I hope so. Maybe you haven't. It's a bit hard. But the message of Christ as Christian people is to remember, actually, you know what, we're brothers and sisters and we're all in this together. We have to start thinking of others before ourselves. And that means maybe putting our panic aside a little bit. Maybe thinking, if I take extra of this, who's going to miss out? Right? Because somebody will. Maybe it's thinking, before I push people to the side, maybe I can take a step back and invite them in. We can't fall into this type of despair. We're people of joy who have been given grace and peace and mercy. As has been said before, it doesn't make it any easier. You can't choose your family. You heard that? Guess what? We're all family. Jesus. We don't get to choose that. Sorry. And sometimes there's squabbles in families. Sometimes there's disagreements in families. But when we come to the altar, when we are side by side, remember that's your brother and your sister beside you. And it's a gift. It's a great joy. And there are many more outside these walls. We exist to find those who need it most, to spread this message of joy and peace and forgiveness and mercy, and to bring people into closer proximity. Maybe 2 meters or so at the moment. Closer proximity, kind of spiritually and emotionally. So we can thank God for all the message He's given us. We can thank the Lord for the Scriptures that give us such incredible stories, like the woman at the well. We can engage ourselves to truly love Scripture and learn the context around it, the message behind it. We can push beyond these barriers to find those who need us and to invite those in who don't know they even want us. In the name of God, the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen.